सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम सदाशिवसमारम्भां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। हरि ओम. Salutations to all. So yesterday we saw the chronology or hierarchy actually of subtlety. Shrutehe shatagunam vidyat mananam. Compared to listening, reflection is 100 times more impactful. Nididhyasam lakshagunam mananadapi. So yesterday I said 1,000 times more than that is nididhyasa. Because 100 plus 1,000, 100 into 1,000, 1 lakh. Some people even say it is 1 lakh times more. Lakshagunam. Mananadapi nididhyasam lakshagunam. Straight away. So it's not that 100 times mananam into 1,000 is nididhyasam. No. Straight away, 1 lakh times more is nididhyasanam. More powerful than mananam. So 100 times mananam and 1 lakh times nididhyasanam. More than that. So nididhyasam lakshagunam and anantam nirvikalpakam, and the impact of nirvikalpa is infinite. It is incomparable. Any amount of number of times you may add, but infinite is infinite. It doesn't add up like that. So the idea here is that one must spend more time in the sadhana. The subtler the sadhana, the greater is the benefit. That's a simple principle. Compared to Shravanam, Mananam is more effective. Compared to Mananam, Nididhyasanam is more effective. Compared to Nididhyasan, Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the most effective. Why it is most effective? Because only Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the reality can be comprehended. There is no other method. 366 will say that. Nirvikalpa Samadhina Sputam Brahma Tattvam Avagamyate Dhruvam Nanyatha Charataya Manogatehe Pratyayantara Vimishritam Bhave. Nirvikalpa Samadhina Sputam. Only by Nirvikalpa Samadhi it will be clearly apprehended. What? Brahma Tattvam Avagamyate Dhruvam. The true nature of Brahman is understood clearly only in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Na anyatha, no other way. Chalataya manogatehe, because the mind is very unsteady. Pratyayantara vimishritam bhavet, because it will get mixed with all the other perceptions that we see, we go through by the senses or through the mind or through the intellect. So whatever we see is only conditioned consciousness. See, all this is also consciousness, appearance of pure consciousness. The enlivener in us also is pure consciousness. As long as there is an equipment, the enlivener of the equipment, and through the equipment I am seeing the world of objects, emotions and thoughts, it is conditioned. It is not the absolute. Absolute can be recognized only in Nirvikalpa Samadhi when I withdraw from all conditionings. Withdraw from the world, from the body, prana, mind, intellect, ego, withdrawn. What remains? That is unconditioned, absolute truth. Till then, whatever I am seeing, even that's why even the darshan of Bhagwan, vision of Bhagwan, etc., is though a very, very high state, Nirvikalpa is beyond that also. Darshan of Bhagwan happens when there is Savikalpa Samadhi and then there is that level of purity of mind, then darshan of Bhagwan happens. But that is also experienced by us through the equipment, and that also is temporary, and it is conditioned only. Sagun Sakar Brahman. Sagun Sakar itself is a condition, is a limitation on that which is infinite. But nevertheless, that is again a stepping stone. So Savikalpa Samadhi, Darshan of Bhagwan, or any other way in which I experience consciousness through the mind, that will be limited only. So Gurudev in his commentary on this verse, last paragraph, in the last portion of the last paragraph, he says, pure self can never be understood. So all that you understand about Atman through the mind and intellect is Sagun Brahman and not Nirgun Brahman. The unconditioned absolute is never understood. You just become it when the mind ends. As long as you look at it through the mind, it is only the conditioned, the limited Sagun version of the eternal absolute self. So that's why Nirvikalpam is Anantam. Because that is the only way to apprehend consciousness directly as one's own true self, without any other conditioning, only when I transcend BMI. Anantam Nirvikalpakam. Now this is, again we say, who is apprehending it? Language barrier. So the Upanishads and the other texts, they also tell us to overcome this language barrier. They will say it is the nature of that self is like a fire without smoke. Jyotiriva adhumakaha. Or it will be like the self sees without eyes, hears without the ears. Pashyamya chakshu sashunomya karnaha. Meaning the seer, the hearer is not there. The entity Mr. So and so is not there, but still consciousness alone is. So that in Nirvikalpa, when body, mind, intellect, identification transcended, self is comprehended. Now, if you ask who is the comprehender there in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then that purpose gets defeated of the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Because if there is an experiencer of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then that experiencer itself is conditioning the experience. How can the infinite experience be experienced by the experiencer? Mr. So and so cannot experience the infinite because the infinite is actually Mr. So and so's true nature. The actor and the role. The actor only is playing the role. Until the actor doesn't drop the whole role completely, the actor will not recognize that I am not the role, I am that actor. Same way, until the mind is not transcended fully, Nirvikalpa Samadhi will not come, will not happen. That we saw earlier also, that in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the Triputi is not there. Seer, seen, not there. It is seeing without the seer. Then who sees? That is the limitation of the language and under our understanding. The seer doesn't need equipment to see itself. Like, do I need some equipment to know who am I in a dark room? I need the torch to put a light on everything in the dark room to know what is other than me. But to know that I exist, I don't need to put torch on me and see. I am aware that I am existing. So in the same way, there is no other medium required for me to know my true self. Mind, intellect are equipment for us to know what is other than I. So what is other than I is all this object, emotions, thoughts. For that, mind and intellect is required. For Om, to realize that Om in the BMI chart, BMI, PFT, OET, Vasana, all of them have to be rejected. Then one comes to that state. And hence he says here this. So what does this also mean? That in Vedanta, Nirvikalpa Samadhi is considered the supreme. As I said, even Darshan of Bhagwan is one step below. Very exalted state. The nature of the self, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa Samadhina Sfutam Brahma Tattvam Avagamyate Dhruvam. Now all these so many verses which we started from 354, the nature of Samadhi. What is the conclusion of all that? I may listen to all these things and very high state and nirvikalpa, there is no triputi and there is experiencer who is dissolved, then the experience of the self is there only then. All these so many other things that we learned finally is to tell us, come on, sit down and contemplate and get into this nirvikalpa samadhi. See 367. Atah samadhat svayatendriya san nirantaram shantamana pratichi विध्वंसयध्वान्तमनाद्य विद्यया कृतं सदेकत्वविलोकनेन. It says atah samadhatsva. Hence, do the practice of samadhi. Yatendriyasan. How? By controlling the senses. Yati means one who controls, lives in self-control, and is putting efforts to know. Yatnam karoti iti yatihi. Puts effort towards the goal, controls the senses. So, atah samadhatsva yatendriya san. Nirantaram shantamana pratichi. And constantly keep the mind quiet. Nirantaram shantamana pratichi. Quieten the mind in the self. Pratichi. Then with that what happens? Vidvamsaya dhvantam anadi avidya. Dhvantam anadi avidya vidvamsaya. This ignorance of this mind, of the reality, ignorance of this reality, you destroy. Kritam sadekatva vilokanena. By perception of the real, absolute truth, you destroy this beginningless ignorance. Vidvamsaya dhvantam anadi avidyaya. The darkness that is created by this beginningless ignorance, you destroy. Vidvamsaya dhvantam anadi avidyaya. Kritam, how? Sadekatva vilokanena. By perception of the real. So by the perception of the reality, destroy the beginningless ignorance. To perceive the reality, practice samadhi. For samadhi, what should be done? Quieten the mind and the senses. And through that, contemplate on the self, then get into samadhi and destroy this beginningless ignorance. So the idea here is to feel the urge to do the jnana sadhana, Shravan, Manan, Nididhyasan, Savikalpa Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Now, till now it was what is Samadhi, its nature. Next few verses tell us how samadhi becomes easier. What all we need. One hint was given earlier that Shanti, Danti, Uparati, Parama Uparati, those things will help to get into samadhi. Those are internal qualities. Now here it is certain qualities which are also internal, but which also have something to do with the external, the senses, the mind, etc. Let us see 368. Again, this is one of the verses which one can memorize. Yogasya prathamadvaram vangnirodho parigraha nirasha cha niriha cha nityam ekanta shilata. So he says Yogasya prathamadvaram vangnirodha. Yoga here does not mean just the yogasana. Yoga here is that samadhi yoga. Samadhi yoga, because samadhi is going to unite us. Yoga means to unite, to join. Samadhi is that which is as though going to unite us with the true self. So yogasya prathama dvaraha. So this is samadhi yoga. So what is the first gate of samadhi yoga? Vang nirodha, control of the speech. Then aparigraha, non-possessiveness. Then nirasha, free from expectation. Niriha, free from selfish activity. And nityam ekanta shilata, live in solitude. 5 important methods to make samadhi easy. See, without these, how will samadhi happen? If these 5 are not there, samadhi experience is not possible. Why? Because each of these will control the senses and the mind and reduce it and help to transcend the identification fully. Absence of these, the attention will remain on the BMI. So the first one he says, Yogasya Prathama Dvaram Vang Nirodha. The first step is control of the speech. Now, there are both ways to take this speech. Control of the speech means, as a symbolic meaning, speech is the sense organ which connects both, which is connected to the Jnana Indriya as taste, Karma Indriya as speech. So tongue is that which is connected to both the Indriya. So control of speech is again symbolic of control of all the 10 senses. That is one meaning, which Gurudev also has said here. Speech does not mean only speaking. It includes the functions of all organs of action. And by implication, organs of action, if I have to control, I have to control the organs of perception also. So all senses to be controlled. That is one meaning. Or second meaning is control actually the speaking, because speaking consumes a lot of energy also. Speaking makes the mind extroverted. And that's why when Maun Sadhana is done, the ability to turn the mind introvert is much, much more. Because speaking makes the mind externalized, and I have to connect more with the body, mind, intellect, the Jiva Bhav. Then I have to see the world out there, then correspond with the certain response. That makes the mind extroverted, externalized, which may be usual in the day-to-day world, but the person who wants to practice Nirvikalpa Samadhi and withdraw the attention completely from the BMI, for that person, that externalization is a disturbance. Hence, Mauna Sadhana can be meant here, that be quiet or speak what is bare minimum. Not go on talking long time and waste their time and energy. Not even discussions on Vedanta. Gurudev Tapan Maharaj used to tell this to Gurudev, that why are you wasting time? What is there to discuss so much? Go and meditate. He would not allow them to ask questions also to him beyond the class time. He would say, we don't have time to waste. Go and meditate. How much will you keep talking? So, emphasis was on turning the attention within. And which is what we have to do as a Vedantic seeker. When the earlier words we have learned, Shrute Shatagunam Vidyat Mananam, Mananadapi Nididhyasanam, and compared to Nididhyasan, compared to Mananam, Lakshagunam is Nididhyasan, compared to Nididhyasan, Anantaguna is Nirvikalpa. So, idea is to learn to withdraw the attention, not to be externalized. So, speech can be used proactively, positively, in a minimum way by a seeker who wants to realize Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Realize the self in that Nirvikalpa Samadhi. For others, yes, mastery over speech may mean how to convince people, how to do some sales, how to, what is the famous book? How to win friends and influence people. There one has to learn how to use the speech for the finite results. So increase the networking, build your contacts and reach out and convince people and buy the product and get them to give you a contract, all that. But for a spiritual seeker, it is opposite. Withdraw, withdraw, withdraw. That speaking words, language, thought. See, for a spiritual seeker, thought itself is externalization from the self. Further externalization of that is through the speech. So if I want to transcend thought and realize the self in Nirvikalpa Avastha, definitely speech has to be controlled, and it's the first thing to be controlled. Why first? Because right now our attention is there from the body standpoint. That is the first thing to control. Then control the prana, then control the mind. So it will proceed like that. Sense control will be the first, because the attention is there on the body and on the senses. So while living in the world, when I have to do some karma yoga, or even some time I may have to spend to maybe interact with some people if they are there. It is why it will be said, live in solitude. Next line, next shloka will come there. Even this one it says, Ekanta Shilata. Live in solitude. So that one doesn't have to interact with people. This is not escapism, please. This is a seeker who is ready for withdrawal, who has done Karma Yoga Upasana, who has gone to the Guru, Shravan Manan Nididhyasan. Now that student wants to withdraw. That's a Uttamadhikari. Like how to Uddhav Bhagwan, Krishna told him that you don't have to do any work or Karma Yoga now, go and meditate. You are ready for this. And when Arjun wanted to go, Bhagwan told him, you are not yet ready. For you, Karma Yoga is a sadhana. So this is the Uttamadhikari who wants to withdraw. So one has to live in quietude, because where to meet people and then talk to them, and then even if that talk is with co-seekers, not even people who are steeped in the world, even if it is with co-seekers, after a point it is of no use, because they are only empty words. The realization of the truth can happen only with intense withdrawal and contemplation. No other method. What was said earlier, no, na anyatha. There is no other method. Discussion, etc., can be to give us intellectual conviction, I am Brahman. Yesterday we saw that. After that, it is contemplation and nothing else. So, Vang Nirodha, very important. It is to control the speech. Minimum words one has to speak, because minimum externalization. No, Swamiji, I am speaking because I want to share this knowledge with the maximum people. That also is a desire which is selfless desire, but it is still a desire, it will still mean extroverting the mind. For Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that is not a conducive method. That is a method to purify the mind to go beyond the BMI. And if one really wants to serve, then one can, there are other methods to serve also without speaking. Of course, the people who will be able to receive that knowledge is very, very few. Like Dakshinamurti Bhagavan showed to the Sanat Kumars, this Jnana Mudra. No words were spoken. The disciples did not ask a question. The Guru did not answer with words. The moment the disciples reached there and they saw Vriddha Shishya Guru Yuva, the disciples are all old and Guru is young. The disciples did not even ask what is their doubt. Bhagavan just showed this, Dakshinamurti Bhagavan sitting below that Vatavriksha, he just showed this Jnana Mudra. Shishya's doubts are all gone. That's called Mauna Vyakhyanam. Mauna Vyakhya Prakadita Para Brahma Tattvam Yuvanam Parsishtante Vasadrishiganai Avritam Brahmanishthaihi. Beautiful verse. Chitram Vatataror Mule Vriddha Shishya Gurur Yuva. Gurostu Maunam Vyakhyanam Shishyastu Chinna Samshaya. Below the Vatavriksha, the Guru is sitting without any, he is young and the disciples have become very old. They have been old, they came. Older than the Guru they are. Gurostu Maunam Vyakhyanam. Guru gives only Mauna Vyakhya. Thus this only shows this much. All doubts of the Shishyas went away. So in Maun also knowledge can be transferred. For that our capability must be there to having experienced that state, then only I can transfer with Maun. In fact, this is very interesting. All knowledge will get absorbed only in Maun. If the mind is disturbed, where knowledge is going to get established? It cannot be understood properly. With a quiet mind, I can understand. So quiet mind comes through quiet speech, quiet senses. So Maunam. Vang Nirodha Aparigraha. So Vang Nirodha, as we said, it means two things. One is to spend more and more time in restraint of the speech in terms of using minimum words, conversing minimum, and on specific topics only which will be conducive to spiritual growth. No gossiping or vain talk or boasting, nothing. One controls and speaks bare minimum, and second meaning is no speech, proper Maun. Depending on one's condition and one's situation, one has to apply this both. Minimum words and silence. That is first step, Vang Nirodha. That will conserve so much of energy and that itself will turn the mind introvert. See, when we do Maun for some days, then after that to speak becomes difficult. In the beginning, not to speak is difficult. When one starts enjoying that Maun, one starts turning the attention more within, experiences some joy of quietude and bliss, then to speak is difficult. One feels, I have to talk now. Okay. That will be the attitude. Otherwise, one will sit quietly, blissfully. Not in tamas, in high level of sattva guna. So, Vang Nirodha, first step. What we can do is apply this every day. Sit for a few minutes. Gurudev says here in the last paragraph again. Therefore, in order to reach Samadhi, learn to sit down at least 10 minutes every day without any activity, physical or mental. So, Yogasya Prathama Dvara Vang Nirodha. First step is control of the speech. Second step, Aparigraha, non-possessiveness. So, possessiveness is the quality again which makes us extrovert because I am attached to things or people or situations. So I insist they have to happen like this only. They have to behave like this only. They should be like this only. They should connect with me in this way only. I must be able to enjoy them in this way only. So coffee has to be hot and it has to be strong and with less milk and in this way only. Now that attachment and insistence to objects and the way they should be, that is called possessiveness. Possessiveness need not be there. Possessions can be there if required. That also as much minimum as I can is better. Aparigraha. No storing. See, this quality is very, very good quality of no storing. Literally speaking, no objects. But we say, no, no, that is very difficult to do. Okay, then if some objects are there for whatever reason, no attachment to them, no possessiveness towards them. If they are there, use it. If they are not there, doesn't matter. See, Tapan Maharaj, if you see his kutia, such bare minimum possessions he has. Very, very less. And if you go to Gurudev's kutia, oh, flooded with so many things. But the possessiveness in both of them is same. Meaning it is not there. Non-possessiveness, I mean. Aparigraha. Non-possessiveness in both of them is the same. Somebody may come and give a gold watch to Gurudev. And next 2 hours he will find somebody who is deserving, and if he finds somebody has to be, given a blessing or something, he will immediately remove that gold watch and give away. No attachment to that at all. Oh God, it is gold, it is so costly. Nothing. Gone. Given away. Tapan Maharaj had how much? Few pairs of clothes, some books, maybe some kamandalu or something. That's all. Not some elaborate, big, huge kutia and all that. So the Guru lived in minimum, barest minimum possessions, in complete aparigraha. Shishya is Gurudev. In sadhana time, he also lived like that. But when he started the missionary life, came down and started working here, and then you see his kutia, there are so many books are there and paintings are there, statues are there, so many things are there. But he had no attachment to anyone, any of them. So aparigraha is not about how many possessions I have and how many I don't. Of course, it makes a difference for a seeker, because many times in the name of having possessions but not being possessive, actually I am possessive and I don't want to give up possessions, but I'm simply justifying, saying we don't have to actually give away all the things we have. We can keep them, we should just not be attached to them. That is not meant here. Non-possessiveness, definitely there is a better chance of non-possessiveness with less things. See, human mind is very strange. With less things also it is possible to become very, very possessive, because those things are less. Like the disciples of Ashtavakra Muni, who were renunciates, they were stuck to their langotis, attached to those. And the Janak Maharaj is sitting there in the satsang. Some news comes that whole Mithila is on fire, including the nearby forests. They run, these sadhus, they all run to protect those few possessions they have. And Janak Maharaj is sitting quietly. He is not leaving the satsang for that. Then they understood, oh, this is the Vairagya of Janak Maharaj, and that's why Ashtavakra Muni reveres him so much, that he was waiting that let Janak come, then satsang will start. And all these sadhus were feeling that why should we wait for him? He is a king after all, living in enjoyment, and we are renunciates, we have left everything and come. in that Leela it was very evident. So human mind very strange. Few possessions one has, one can get very attached to those also. Or one can get very attached to many possessions that one has. Or one may have all these but be not attached at all. So then one will ask, is it necessary then to leave? Very necessary to leave, because then only I know how much is my attachment. One. Two, time. More things I have, more I have to maintain them. Every time dust them, clean them, put it back, maintain them, repair them if it gets spoiled. Arey, how much? And when it is fully spoiled, then dispose it. Now one has to think today where to dispose also, how to dispose it. What is a safe way to do it? All that. So where is the mind going to have time? The more the number of possessions, the things and all that, the more time goes. And the most funny thing will happen is with possession comes samsar. Full samsar will start. When I was growing up, my grandmother used to tell this story. You must have also heard that there was one sadhu who was living there quietly, renunciator in the forest. He is living quietly, spending time in his meditation. And as usual, he doesn't have much possessions. One day, what happens? He finds that there is a hole in his langoti. So he figures out what there is some animal coming here. So he sees, array, there is a rat. And the rat comes, and rat needs something to go on nibbling. So the rat found the langoti and he started nibbling. So the langoti has a hole. He discarded it, made another one. Again, the next one also had same issue. So he said, this is too much now. This rat now, it goes on coming. And slowly you see, once a rat finds a route and comes to a place, it remembers, and it has its timing also. It will come at that time, it will do everything, go away. And then with that will come the other rats also. So now this sadhu thought that this is not going to end like this. And he himself did not want to kill the rat. And he was living in the forest. He doesn't have rat trap and all those things he didn't have. So what did he do? He got a cat. Went to the village, etc., got a cat. And he started, the cat was there, kept in his kutia, in the ashram there he had. And this cat would, because of the fear of the cat, the rat stopped coming. But now this cat has to be taken care of. So now he needs milk. So every day he used to get up and go first to get the milk early morning. Nobody will come. That milkman doesn't come to the forest to deliver the milk. He has to go. Now every morning he leaves his meditation and first he goes to get the milk. And he used to feel guilty also. Okay, I am leaving my meditation. I am going to get milk for this cat. But now cat is there. So he goes to get the milk from the cat, for the cat. Every day he goes like that. Then he says, this is now getting too much to go every day and miss the meditation in the morning, and better let it be that I will get a cow. So he asks for some help. Somebody donates a cow to him. Godan. And that to a Brahman. So Godan to a Brahman is very punyashali. So somebody donated. Now this man brought this rishi, the sadhu, he brought the cow. Now this cow is there in his ashram there. And cow, you don't have to do anything much to feed the forest. It goes around and eats whatever grass and plants, etc. Whatever is there, it survives on that. Now he was pleased. Chalo, problem solved. That this cow has come. Now I have to only milk the cow and give this to that cat. The rest of the time I can meditate. And he started meditating. Then after some time, what happened? This cow also has to be taken care of properly. Somebody has to wash the cow, bathe the cow, give the food to the cow, or take the cow out for grazing and protect this cow when it goes for grazing, because animals, otherwise wild animals, they will kill the cow. Now this man said, Arey, this to I didn't think only. So finally he said, all this is going to affect me so much. I have to spend time in taking care of the cow and then the cat and then milk and then their safety and all that. I will need somebody to assist me in all this. So finally that sadhu got married. You just think, to protect that langoti, this whole samsar started for that sadhu. That is possessiveness. So it can be few objects or it can be many objects, but the point is, when there are many, samsar can start in maintaining that. Even if there are some, attachment to those can also make them expand, and then all this will happen. So this possessiveness is something which is very, very unique. It doesn't depend only on the number of things I have, with less or more. Definitely with less things, there are chances that my time can be saved. And if I have the right attitude of detachment, then I am free from possessiveness. Otherwise, this possessiveness can go. Sadhus are supposed to not even um, store food. And that's why technically, if you see, the bhiksha is in one bowl, or maximum food that can come into these two hands, that much only one takes and one eats. One doesn't keep anything extra and store it, that what will happen for today evening. Suppose I don't get bhiksha, then I can eat some of this extra food. Nothing. If it doesn't come, it doesn't come. Bhagwan takes care of it. Leave it. So there is no storing. I am talking very strict orthodox rules also, as well as the sadhana that some of them do. They will not keep possessions. Extra food is there, they'll give it away to somebody, because it also uh, strengthens our faith. It also strengthens titiksha. When I don't possess and I live moment by moment, I live really with the attitude that prarabdham pushyati vapuhu, that we saw earlier in Vivek Chudamani. Prarabdha will take care of the body. Why do I have to store? Bhagwan is the karma phaladata, and this body is already, it is the result of my karmas of the past, and the prarabdha karma has decided the destiny of this body, that how much it is going to live, for how long it is going to live. The karma has already decided it. It's like a fully paid vacation. I don't have to spend anything in it, because somebody already paid for it. In that example, somebody has paid because you won a lot, you won some contest or something, and the sponsor or the organization has given you the fully paid vacation. You don't have to spend anything in that. Same thing it is here. Prarabdha, the very fact that I am born itself means that some past karma's result is this. And till that body will sustain, the food and the other arrangements of it already are set. So titiksha, shraddha, they become stronger when I don't keep possessions. Again, as I said, this is more to be applied at the mental level, and depending on one stage of life. Suddenly don't say after today's Vivek Chudamani class that I am renouncing all my possessions, given away to everybody. Now I don't have anything. People will start panicking around you. But one can definitely minimize. So if I already have some 10 pairs of clothes, enough now. How much more will I buy? There are people who live like that. We will wear a what dress only once. We cannot repeat. People don't have clothes to wear. And here is another extreme. I will wear only once. I will not repeat. Books. I made a rule some time back that if I have to buy a book, it will be only when I have to give up a book. Otherwise, books one goes on collecting so many books. And how much time is there to read? The time is not there to read. It's just lying there. So like that, we keep collecting, collecting, collecting. That attitude of collecting has to drop. It is not that more things means more security. That's a false notion. Because more things can mean more problem also. That somebody will come and take it away. Now how to protect it? So we can practice some ways or the other. We can reduce the possessions and be content with whatever we need and we have. Not add more and more and more and more. Then you need more space also. Then you need bigger place and then more servants, more one has to work hard to feed them and to give them the salary. Where does this end? There is no end only. So for a spiritual seeker, aparigraha. Keep minimum possessions and keep no possessiveness. That's the simplest sadhana. That is the simplest conclusion. Because permutations and combinations are so many. Less possessions, more possessiveness. More possessions, less possessiveness. Or medium amount of possessions, possessiveness is also more. That combinations are so many. Attitude should be according to my stage of life. I keep minimum possessions, be content with what I have, and learn to turn the attention to the self by dropping all possessiveness. So aparigraha. Yogasya prathama dwaram vang nirodha aparigraha. Then he says nirasha. And nirasha literally sometimes one translates as sad, depressed, hopeless. Here doesn't mean that. Nirasha here means, asha means desire. Fruits of action which will come in future. Because desire is something Gurudev used to say, it's a scheme for happiness in future. So the word asha is connected to future, and in future there is the desire to enjoy the fruits of action. Nirasha means no attachment to the fruits of action. Whatever action results come, I will accept prasada buddhi that Bhagavan has sent this for the good of mine, accept it. That is called nirasha. Where the mind doesn't get excited by some favorable response, result, and mind doesn't get completely dejected at some unfavorable result. Nirasha is equanimous. You can say udasin, nirasha, equanimous, samatvam, all mean the same. So nirasha means that. Desire to enjoy the fruits of action, insist on fruits of action, given up. Then why will I act? For the joy of acting. 1. 2. To exhaust karma. 3. To purify the mind. Motivation of action is not just to enjoy the result. Result is actually a bonus. The main purpose is because I love to do the action, I live in Swadharma. Then I can purify the mind. These are the purposes for action. And to exhaust karma. Ensure that no new karma gets added. Exhaust the existing karma, no new karma gets added. That all happens through prasada buddhi and Ishwar Arpan Bhav. So nirasha means that I am acting not for enjoyment of the result. Bhoga vritti, that's the point there. The bhoga vritti has to be eliminated. Till bhoga vritti is there, till attachment to results is there, how will the mind go into samadhi? It cannot go. Again and again it will go out. some desire. So if I work hard now, I want to enjoy a good lifestyle, I want to eat, drink, be merry. Where will that mind go? To Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Or if I have some success as my goal, some promotion, some target, some certain things which I have to achieve, again the mind is going to run behind those things only. Where will be the time to sit and meditate and withdraw the full attention and be in samadhi? For that, the goal has to be samadhi. Then the karma will be towards that. If the goal is bhoga vritti and for that some karma has to be done, the motivation of karma is not purity of mind and realization of the self. The motive of karma then will be sense enjoyment, power, position, pleasure, prestige, popularity. Then the mind will go there. So nirasha means to move away the mind from the extroverted to within. How to do? Only through spirit of karma yoga. Serve the Lord without results expectation. When we say no expectation, doesn't mean no functional expectation. It means no bhoga vritti. The deep desire to enjoy the results of our action. So the action is not motivated by love of action, which is swadharma, and not motivated by the fact that karma has to get exhausted and my mind should become quieter, not motivated by this purity of mind, selflessness. No. Bhoga vritti and sense enjoyment, and for that, whatever achievement and money and position, etc., I have to achieve, I will want to act for that. See, this is not a condemnation of this. I'm just saying that what Vedanta is telling us, if I want Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then I have to have this Nirasha. Because the paths are different. One is Nivritti and one is Pravritti. Now, Pravritti will not lead to Nivritti simultaneously. I have to finish Pravritti, turn to Nivritti. And Pravritti has to be done in a proper attitude, activity, action. If I do with the right attitude of Karma Yoga, then automatically Nivritti will happen. Dharmate virati, Tulsidas ji says. And so here it is, Nirasha. Drop the deep desire to enjoy the world through my actions. Actually, for a spiritual seeker who is wanting Nirvikalpa Samadhi, who has cultivated fourfold qualifications, these are all just fine tunings. Because the Vivek is already been done, then Vairagya is already there from the Phala Bhoga Viraga. What was said here earlier. In the Vivek Chudamani, in the beginning it comes. Dehadi Brahma Paryante Anitya Bhoga Vastuni Tad Vairagyam Jihasaya Darshana Shravanadivi. That is called Vairagya, which is completely you drop Jihasaya. There is no desire for seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching. Darshana Shravanadivi. No desire to enjoy sense objects. And the dispassion is from the body, Dehadi, from beginning with the body till Brahmalok, whatever is there in the world, no desire to enjoy that. That Bhoga Vritti is gone, to a large extent eliminated. That is called Nirasha, which was earlier said as Vairagya. So stronger the Vairagya is, greater this Nirasha will be. And stronger the Vairagya, more ability to turn the mind introvert and realize Samadhi Avastha. Nirasha. Niriha. So Iha also means desire, but in this case the word Niriha means freedom from selfish actions. Because action is a effect of desire only, and desire was already covered. Nirasha means freedom from this selfish desire to indulge and to enjoy. And Niriha means no selfish action. That's how Gurudev has translated it here. Nirasha means Niriha means give up all the selfish desire prompted activity. Because of the fact that they strengthen the ego. Selfishness will strengthen the ego. Where one thinks of I, me, mine. That's it. Nirvikalpa is experienced only when I go beyond I, me, and mine. And this is strengthening I, me, and mine. Bhogavritti as well as selfish activity, both. So Nirasha and Niriha. So this question only that what did I get, that will not allow me to get in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That has to dissolve. I am here to serve quietly. I want nothing. Purity of mind will automatically come with that attitude. Till I keep wondering what did I get, how much did I serve, what was the benefit to me, how I did selflessly, but people didn't recognize my efforts. They did not even give one word of praise. On the contrary, they accused me of some of the things. So I don't want to serve anymore. Now all that is impurity of the mind. One will be frustrated only. How can one get in Nirvikalpa Samadhi with that? So one can do the seva, etc. Purify the mind, drop the selfishness. Both these now, nirashacha, nirihacha. And then nityam ekanta shilata. Nityam ekanta shilata. So before I go there, nirasha and niriha, how to cultivate? Nirasha can be cultivated by tivra vivek and vairagya. Identify what all bhoga vrittis are there and eliminate by seeing the limitation and the pain of it. Pratipaksha bhavana. That is nirasha can be cultivated like that. Through pratipaksha bhavana, by seeing the painful side of the pleasurable tendencies and increasing vivek and vairagya. How to cultivate niriha, freedom from selfish desires and actions, by doing seva, nishkama seva, selfless work. Wherever I am at home, work, profession, society, in that I can do with the attitude I am here to serve. And if possible and time and space is there for it, then do specific social service activity also, which is beyond the scope of my uh, daily life in terms of my family life and my professional life, etc. Then do that also. Go and volunteer some time. So many people can serve in so many different ways. Orphanage is there, or some poor people, one goes and gives them some annadan, anything. The mission also has so many opportunities. Come and serve selflessly, nothing one wants, only purity of mind. That will also happen on its own. So keep serving quietly. I'm serving the Lord, wherever one is. That is Niriha and Nirasha. Now Nityam Ekanta Shilata. Constantly live in solitude. Eka Anta, meaning single pointed. So Ekant does not mean only being away from people. That is one big means to remain focused on the goal, because now I don't have to think about people, talking to them, transacting with them, nothing. I just ensure when I am alone, my mind remains focused. Eka means one, anta means end. Towards one end, the mind is focused. That the goal is to realize the self in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Already I don't want possessions. Now I don't want to interact with people also. That is a direct meaning of Ekanta, means solitude. Be alone, not lonely. Gurudev would say, be alone, not lonely. And there he would go on to explain that loneliness is a feeling that we have within us of insecurity, of fear, of it's a combination of all this. I can be amidst lots of people and still feel lonely. I can be amidst a lot of people and still be alone. So yes, just like possessiveness, same thing applies to solitude also. With people also I can be very, very miserable. Without people I can be most happy. With people I can be most happy when I'm focused on my goal inside. That also is possible. Without people also I can be happy. With people also I can be happy. Ekant actually means that aloneness, means that actually. But for a spiritual seeker, as we said earlier, withdrawal from people also is a important sadhana to turn within. If I don't have to bother about people and are they comfortable, what has to be done, can I help you, what do you need, none of that is required. When one is trying to realize the self through nirvikalpa, one has to literally withdraw. That's why they used to go away to forest and stay alone there, away from the people, because people come, then all this one has to do. Take care of them, ask them, do you need anything? And then they will want to spend some time with you. So then start conversations. Then the mind again becomes extrovert. And not everybody is able to talk at a certain level. So then all unnecessary dirt comes back into the mind. So many things can happen. So ekanta shilata, withdraw away from people, live in solitude. Now what should be done in that solitude? And what is the objective? Those things we take up in our next class. But important point is this, that solitude is an important aspect. If I am the solitude applicable at two places, two levels. One is literally at the physical level, withdraw and be alone, so that I focus only on self-development, trying to turn the mind within. See, this is applicable to all, not only in spiritual life. A person, let us say a sports person, training for Olympics that are coming up. We'll have to spend so much time with oneself to develop, to practice, to overcome the limitations, to increase the stamina. So many things one has to do. So focus has to be on oneself. Anywhere, a musician who wants to play music and become expert will be so absorbed in that practice that doesn't bother about people around. They don't have to. If one has to focus so much and achieve a certain level of performance, then single pointedness has to be there, withdrawing from everything else literally. So that is one level of withdrawal. Second level of withdrawal is in the mind also. So physically I move away, that is great. Mentally also I should move away. Then that physical moving away is helpful. How will that happen? By focusing on the goal. More and more I remember my goal, more and more I will get focused on that. So this is about actually going away and withdrawing physically as well as mentally. So two levels of withdrawal, physical withdrawal, mental withdrawal. Suppose I'm not able to go away physically, then mentally at least withdraw. Do minimum transactions. And in the seat of contemplation, 100% withdrawal. I don't have to bother about anybody in meditation. Only on the self I have to contemplate. That's all. The Gita Bhagavan says, whenever mind goes away, manas chanchalam asthiram tatastato niyam yaitad atmani eva vasham nayet. Bring it under the control of Atma alone, nothing else. Atma samstam manakritva na kinchidapi chalaye. Having made the mind abide in the self, don't think anything else. That is actually called ekant, where I withdraw fully from all thought, all desires. Withdraw fully. Then nirvikalpa samadhi happens. Gurudev used to say, when the last thought is thoughted and no more thought is thoughting. That clip I will put up on the Google Drive in the study material folder. So you can listen to that clip. Very nice clip it is. That actually will lead to nirvikalpa samadhi. When the last thought is thoughted and no vasana pressure, so no more new thought is coming, that is this. So for today we will stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha.